Big recruiting weekend in Norman. Williams Nwaneri in town. We'll update you on what happened with that, as well as several predictions that came down the pike over the weekend on today's episode of Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. My name is John Williams. You can follow me on Twitter at John9Williams. My buddy here is Josh Helmer. You can follow him on Twitter at JoshOnRef. You can also hear him Monday through Friday from 9 to noon on 94.7 The Ref in Norman. Josh, I hope you had a fantastic weekend.
You as well, my friend. And how was your weekend?
Not too bad. It was a working weekend. I say a day job working weekend at the hospital. So, but got to talk to a lot of people about Oklahoma softball and the recruiting stuff that's going on right now. So we'll start there. We'll start with Williams Nwaneri. The big fish was in town, the Lee Summit North prospect, visiting the Oklahoma Sooners, getting to spend some time with former teammate Caden Green, with Miguel Chavis, was hosted by Jonah Laula. So all in all, it sounds like it was a pretty good weekend for Williams in Norman, and that Oklahoma continued to put their best foot forward.
Well, if I can only judge by a Parker Thune tweet that had Miguel Chavis's face on it, clearly it had to have been a great weekend for the Oklahoma Sooners, right? That's I think that's the big takeaway is, all right, we got a Miguel Chavis tweet, so things are going well. No, obviously Williams Nwaneri comes in before the Champ U barbecue. The thought process there was a little bit more intimate with the coaching staff, a little bit more one-on-one time, and the early returns it was good for Williams Nwaneri and his family in Norman. So probably we've said about all that you can say on this subject. This is a massive, massive target for Oklahoma. It's as close to a must-get target for Oklahoma as I think you can find this side of David Stone. I mean, those two, it feels like, John, this class for Oklahoma, for so many people, again, a Bryant Wesco miss that stunk. It stung. There's other skill guys. You want all of them, but if there was one guy of the three you were going to miss, probably was that offensive playmaker in this class. If you tell Oklahoma fans they're getting David Stone and Williams Nwaneri both. So the early returns, it sounds like, John, were good. I don't know that. I mean, clearly it doesn't lock anything up with Williams Nwaneri, but as far as Oklahoma could impress, it sounds like Oklahoma impressed.
Yeah, and I kind of jokingly said this on Twitter earlier after I don't know, it was maybe an Adam Gorney tweet about a Texas Tech visitor and how he had a great time, but has a recruit ever said that they didn't have a good time at a visit? But I liked some of the quotes that Williams shared with Parker, and it's a great article over at Rivals at OU Insider. So go check that out. But this one, towards the end of it, was one of the ones that was the most intriguing. And he said, I feel like with the way Coach Venables runs his defense, I'd be able to put everything on tape. I could definitely see myself playing in this defense. They talked about Nigel and talked about Stone. I talked to Stone when I was at the airport to see where his head's at. Also PJ too. Like, just thinking about it, it would be kind of crazy. That potential D-line, that would be crazy. So, I mean, this is a guy that is picturing himself on Oklahoma's defensive line with the likes of guys like Nigel Smith, who've been heavily projected to Oklahoma, with PJ Adebawore, Oklahoma's 5-star defensive end in the 2023 cycle, with David Stone, another big fish in the 2024 cycle. So the fact that he's kind of getting that image into his head and thinking about the possibilities and the potential of that, I think that's a pretty solid sign. Now, again, he's going to be wined and dined and hosted and shown by coaching staffs like Miguel Chavis did with him in Norman this weekend, that he's going to be shown how he fits into a defense and how he's going to be best utilized. Well, nobody has a better track record than Brent Venables, aside from maybe a Kirby Smart, a Dan Lanning, who could show in more recent success of what they've done. But we've talked about it ad nauseum the amount of players that Brent Venables and his defenses have put into the NFL. I mean, a lot of times we talk about the interior guys as it relates to David Stone, but we don't often talk about the edge guys. But I mean, think about a Vic Beasley. He was a guy that kind of came to or went to Clemson raw and ended up being a big time producer for the Tigers, and then ends up in the NFL as a pass rusher. So Brent Venables' defense, especially along the defensive line, is very conducive to helping guys get to the NFL. We saw it at Oklahoma in the early 2000s, 2010. So there is a lot of potential for him there. And again, we've been imagining it for months, the idea of a blue chip defensive line headlined by Williams Nwaneri and David Stone, Nigel Smith. And, now there's another one that we'll talk about here in a little bit, Jayshawn Ross, but they're looking to continue to build upon what they did in the 2023 cycle when they signed PJ Adebawore and Derek LeBlanc, two 4-star or two blue chip prospects, by building on that as they go into the SEC. So yeah, it is what it is. Like, you take it and you're like, okay, that's encouraging. At least it doesn't necessarily mean a commitment's coming, but at least it keeps Oklahoma in very favorable position, especially as he had his parents in town and they got to meet with the coaching staff and hear what was possible and really how they're going to take care of Williams when he's in Norman. So just, again, an encouraging weekend for the Sooners on the Williams Nwaneri front.
That quote that you shared, do you buy into the idea now that Williams Nwaneri's recruitment is independent of David Stone, of Nigel Smith, or are you starting to come around to the idea with Williams Nwaneri that it's all connected, that if you get one, you're getting all three, or if you don't get Williams Nwaneri, you're getting none? I mean, do you buy into any of that, or is that just, hey, I was asked a question about these great players that I might be playing alongside if I come to Norman? I mean, where do you stand with it?
I generally lean toward the idea that prospects aren't necessarily connected like that, unless they're family or, they played high school ball together. You know what I mean? Like the Caden Green, Williams Nwaneri connection, that means more to me than the, necessarily his connection to Nigel Smith, David Stone, that sort of thing. Like, Michael Hawkins and Davin Mitchell having been, friends forever, in the Allen Pee Wee football ranks and playing high school ball together before they both transferred, that connection means something, I think, a lot deeper than the, 5-star guys want to play with 5-star guys, 4-star guys want to play with 4, that kind of thing. Because Williams Nwaneri decides to go to Georgia, he's going to be playing with some 5-star dudes. If he decides to go to LSU, Oregon, same with David Stone. If he decides to go to, wherever, Miami, Georgia, Oregon, he's going to get to play some really, really good players. So, but I do think the relationships can help, but a lot of that comes from, do they vibe? Like, do they get along? And I think that's where the kind of the relationship kind of thing matters, in that, if they get along before they even get on campus, I think that'll help. But I don't think it's necessarily one of those things that's like, all right, David Stone commits, I'm in, I'm all in, I'm going. I do think that that is information that's part of the decision-making process, but it's not the biggest factor, I don't think, in my opinion.
Well, it's nice for us to be able to think about what it would look like. A PJ Adebawore, a LeBlanc, a Nwaneri, a David Stone, a Nigel Smith. And I do think just, whether or not they are truly dependent upon one another at all, or if it's totally independent, which you're probably right. I think in most instances it is. And occasionally you see the quote unquote package deal in spots for guys that play high school ball together or have trained together, or for whatever reason, they're very, very close. Probably it's typically independent of one another, but I don't think it's the worst thing for OU that Williams Nwaneri's thinking about just that. If on any level there's some thought given to, okay, here's what my future could look like alongside an Adebawore, a LeBlanc, a Stone, a Smith, what this could do for my future to play alongside players that talented, that has to be a recruiting push and pitch for Georgia, right? Is nobody is going to make you look better than coming here to play for the 2-time defending national champions, because look, all these great players that are around you. And, frankly, for Oklahoma, as you look across the, like the visit schedule for Nwaneri, okay, Tennessee did some incredible things offensively, not really necessarily quite there defensively like a Georgia, right? Missouri, same thing. Not going to have the same talented of type of talent that hypothetically, theoretically, Oklahoma maybe would have if all of these decisions come down. Oregon, very, very talented. I would argue Oklahoma up front would be more talented than Oregon if they get all of these guys, and it turns out to be the kind of class that we're hoping it would be. So again, is it definitely a factor for Oklahoma? No, probably not. But it's enticing to think about if I'm Williams Nwaneri.
It is. It is enticing to think about. And I think that, the fact that he's dreaming about it, or at least considering the possibility, that kind of stuff, it can play a part in a recruitment or in a decision making, just deciding. But also, like, if Williams commits but David Stone doesn't, how does that work out? So I think, again, it's like, players committing to schools or committing to coaches and not committing to schools. That's part of it. And I think you don't commit to play alongside of a player, you commit to play for a coach and play for a program. And if you get to play with these guys, and then that's just icing on the cake. Right. So that's kind of where I stand with it. I do think, offensive line, quarterback, wide receiver connections, I think those kind of matter a little bit, because chemistry is very important to those position groups, to the quarterback, wide receiver connection. The wide receiver wants to have a good rapport with his quarterback and vice versa. Offensive linemen want to be able to vibe and communicate well with one another, because that's all, so much of offensive line play is about chemistry and communication. Like, there's the 4 C's: chemistry, communication, continuity. Maybe it's 3 C's. I can't remember. I made this up on my own, but now I can't remember what it was. But chemistry, continuity, and communication are incredibly key for offensive line play. So those are kind of the positions where I do think the relationships matter a lot. Now, it can matter on the defensive line, and it could be a big part of either David Stone or Williams Nwaneri's decision-making process, but I can't say one way or the other if it is a part of his decision-making or not. Got a few other recruiting notes we're going to touch on the other side of this break, including Zion Ragins, Jayshawn Ross. Then we'll touch on Kinsey Hansen is back. How huge is that for Oklahoma heading into what they hope will be a chance at a 4-peat? We'll talk about that after we talk to you about our friends over at FanDuel.
Might be running out of time, ladies and gents, to place that winning wager on the NBA Finals. Starting to get late, and might be getting late on the Stanley Cup Final as well. Both of those series 3-1, but make a fast break on over to FanDuel during the NBA playoffs, the NBA Finals right now, because right now, new customers, a no sweat first bet for you up to $2,500. That's crazy. That's incredible. $2,500 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. That's as good as it's going to get out there, ladies and gents. There's no better place to bet all of the playoff action this NBA Finals. We'll see if it's still going to be a lengthy stay for Miami. Starting to get late. Denver trying to close this thing out, but no better place to get involved. America's #1 sports book. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get your no sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. And don't forget, Major League Baseball season, it's just getting cooking. So there's going to be plenty of fun all summer long and into college football season, which is not too awfully far away anymore. We've got some good recruiting nuggets out there. Zion Ragins. Here's somebody that we talked about the other day, but just to rehash a little bit of that in case you missed it, this will be it'll be a difficult battle for Oklahoma versus a couple of SEC foes. Georgia, Tennessee thought to be heavily involved, though there's more recruiting predictions coming down the pipeline, John, for one Zion Ragins to Oklahoma. And I got to tell you, 5'9", $150 is what he's listed on 24/7 Sports. Top 250, top 120 kid, blue chip recruit, depending on where you're looking at, whether it's composite ranking, a little bit higher. 24/7 Sports, just their independent ranking. He's number 210 nationally, but My man can absolutely zip John. 10.47 100-meter dash time, 200-meter dash time, 21.29 seconds. So he's got get up speed in a hurry. And because he's got that 5'9", 150 frame, he looks like Pac-Man when he gets going out. This is just zipping down the football field. But here's somebody that could really, really add some speed to Oklahoma. So great news on the recruiting front here.
Yeah, so we got Parker Thune, Brandon Drum, and Josh McQuistion all issuing predictions favoring the Sooners for Zion Ragins. If I have that right, maybe I'm misthinking. I might be thinking about Jayshawn Ross and Josh McQuistion. Sorry about that, folks. But no, the Sooners are looking really good right now as it pertains to Zion Ragins. So we got Thune and Drum both believing that it's going to be the Oklahoma Sooners. And sorry, I'm trying to find it, make sure I get this absolutely right. And then, yes, Josh McQuistion did issue an on-3 prediction for the Sooners to land Zion Ragins. Yeah, just speed for days. Several people you look around, and I know I comped Bryant Wesco to CeeDee Lamb, and that didn't really work out. But a lot of people are talking about Zion Ragins as maybe like a Marquise Brown type, and he's definitely got the speed for it. Now, whether he's able to make that translate to the collegiate level, that remains to be seen, because Marquise Brown was something special. I mean, he does not come around very often. And to find a guy like that who could, beat you deep, or he can take a drag route, 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage and bust it for 80 yards. Like that's the kind of player that he was, just absolutely special. But it is a bit of a turn in style of wide receiver that Oklahoma is recruiting. Now they're still out there recruiting the big 6'2" to 6'6" wide receiver to see if they can get that size as well. But they're definitely placing a priority on speed. We got the Jaquays Petaway signing in the 2023 class. We got KJ Daniels committed to the 2024 cycle, and you're still pursuing a guy like Zion Ragins to add a second speedster to your class. So, I mean, you're looking at a potential lineup in 24, 25, where you're rolling out Petaway and Daniels and Ragins and 3 wide receiver sets. And you're like, okay, who are you going to stop? Which one of these guys is going to go deep? You don't know. Or all of these guys going to go deep. You're not going to be able to have the safeties that keep up with, 10-5 speed across the board. So it's a bit of the Alabama, philosophy, is get as much speed as you possibly can at wide receiver and just force teams to play so soft with their safeties that then you can just run the ball as much as you want to, because they can't afford to just leave one safety back because of the speed that you have on the outside. So I love the strategy here. I love that they're really trying to add a speed dynamic to this team, because I feel like, aside from Marvin Mims, you really didn't have much speed. And Marvin Mims is fast, 100%. He's a fast dude. You don't run 4.38 on accident. He's a really fast player, but he never looked like the kind of player that was just always blowing by people. Now he did blow by people, but it was almost like with a relative ease sometimes, as opposed to just kicking up the afterburners. So the fact that, you're looking to add not just one player in a class, but multiple players in a cycle to really solidify the fact that you're going to have a lot of speed. I love this strategy by Jeff Lebby, Emmett Jones, to potentially have so much speed that you're not going to know what to do with it.
Well, and it's not even, to me, always take the top off of a defense speed. I mean, that's obvious, right? It's somebody that can just beat you over the top. It's faster than you, and all of a sudden 4 verts, here we go, and there's one guy you can't keep up with. But given what we've now seen for 1 year with Jeff Lebby, it's the sideline to sideline speed too of somebody like a Ragins, trying to get guys in motion to try and corral somebody like Ragins from sideline to sideline, and then all of a sudden, boom, cut up and you're gone. Or you're focused on a jet sweep end around, and then you pop the defense over the top to somebody else. So there's no such thing as too much speed. And though you can add a little bit of weight, and you'll want to with somebody like Ragins, they'll get that accomplished. I mean, there were people that were worried about Hollywood Brown and his size coming to Oklahoma. And guess what? It worked out just fine for the Sooners with Hollywood Brown. So I've got no qualms or no worries that will be any different with Zion Ragins if and when you get him on campus and signed to Oklahoma. So I love it, man. I think it's a terrific strategy. Just get as much speed on campus and figure it out later.
Yeah, and we're going to have more recruiting later in this week. We're going to have Brian Smith, Locked On's recruiting expert, back with us later in the week as well to break down Oklahoma's first weekend visiting in June and get you ready for Champ U Barbecue as well. But let's talk Jayshawn Ross. Jayshawn Ross is a edge rusher that Oklahoma offered back in December of 2022. Kind of been off the radar a little bit, not really heard much buzz surrounding the Sooners and Jayshawn. He's a Kansas City native. We know Brent Venables in Oklahoma want to have a heavy influence in the Kansas City area. And this is a kid that all of a sudden is popping back up on the radar, and Brandon and Parker both issued predictions in favor of the Oklahoma Sooners. Now, Ross is a very interesting cat. He is a two-way player, as a lot of elite high school players are. So he plays edge rusher for his high school team, but he also plays wide receiver. So he's got a ton of athleticism. But when you look at him as an edge rusher, the thing that really, really stands out to me is he's a tenacious pass rusher with a big time motor. He doesn't get stifled. Like if you might kind of block his initial pass rush move, but that's all you're going to get because he's going to work his butt off to get by you. And he does. And I mean, he's got really strong hands. He's got good athleticism. He's quick off the line of scrimmage. But what really shows up is just his ability to continue to fight through blocks. I saw it, several times watching his huddle highlight tape, and that's the thing that stands out the most. Yeah, you want the twitchy guys that like R. Mason Thomas that are just going to blow by guys, but it's a very intriguing and tangible to have a kid that doesn't just give up off the kind of the stalemate, you know what I mean? Or once he's stalemated that he's done. Nah, the kid just keeps fighting and he works his hands really, really well to get the offensive lineman off of him. So very intriguing prospect. I really, really think it's going to be an interesting kind of battle. He looks to me, Josh, and we were kind of talking about this pre-show, but he looks like a guy that could potentially be a competition for that cheetah spot down the road.
Yeah, Miguel Chavis is the primary recruiter here, which would indicate that just as Rivals and 24/7 Sports, everywhere looks at Jayshawn Ross and says defensive end, edge rush type, and it checks out. You watch the tape. I mean, that's where he's playing, and he looks terrific out there. But I'm with you. The speed and the frame, you could see where a move to cheetah could be a possibility down the road, even though obviously it feels pretty unanimous. I'm just looking at some of the folks that are recruiting, not even from Oklahoma, but I mean, it's defensive line coaches, edge coaches across the country that are recruiting as the primary recruiter, Jayshawn Ross. But somebody like that has a little bit of versatility to where you don't have to be married to this idea of edge rush, especially for Oklahoma, where and probably most schools, John, don't have the name of cheetah, but have something similar to where you've got that sort of linebacker edge rush meets safety type that gives you a little bit of versatility and flexibility to have multiple options each class that you're signing in that could fit that mold. Jayshawn Ross, I see what you're saying. He could be that guy. Or if you just decide that he's going to stick at edge, I like the idea of adding some weight and what he could be right there. I mean, obviously he's a blue chip guy according to Rivals.
Yeah, very, very intriguing prospect. Again, if Miguel Chavis believes that you can rush the passer and you can play defensive end, who am I to disagree? Again, they're the team that flipped R. Mason Thomas, and we saw really early on as a true freshman that even though he was a little bit undersized, it didn't seem to matter. He's got the juice. So very intrigued by Jayshawn Ross. We'll continue to follow that recruitment as it transpires. But one thing we know, Josh, is Kinsey Hansen is back for year number 5 with the Oklahoma Sooners, a chance to win a 4th national title with Oklahoma. That absolutely huge news, man. As far as key players go, we talk about Jada, we talk about Tiara, and I know we talk about Kinsey too, but sometimes I feel like she gets kind of put in that second tier. She was absolutely critical to Oklahoma's championship run. I mean, she's in that top tier with Jada Coleman and Tiara Jennings. She was a first-team All-American. She was an all-tournament team member. She is somebody that is an elite player in college softball, both behind the plate and at the plate.
She's been a incredible talent for Oklahoma softball, and really, I think has been an incredible human being with Oklahoma softball, navigating some of the ups and downs of the injury concerns at times, and really just never being a complainer or somebody that let you in on a lot of the issues at times maybe that she was facing throughout the course of her career. And so with that as the backdrop to what happened this past season, John, just awesome that she got some big moments and delivered and said big moments. And of course, in terms of the winning streak and in making history for Oklahoma, none larger than the 3-run blast versus Clemson, though, in terms of winning the championship, some moments at the WCWS maybe were a little bit larger for Oklahoma, but great news. She's a bona fide superstar. If ever, and she has at times been maybe overshadowed by a Jordy Ball or a Jocelyn Allo or a T.R.A. Jennings or a Jada Coleman, because guess what? That's massive mega star power at the University of Oklahoma. Great to have her back. Don't lose sight of the type of star power that you've got on campus at Oklahoma and Kinsey Hansen. This is a superstar, John, saying that I'm coming back for one more ride.
Yeah, because you think about, okay, she had, I'll have to find the stats real quick, but I know 2 years ago she had back in the 2021 season, she had a 20 home run season. This year she hit over 400. She was, what was it, third on the team in batting average. And she hit like just under 500 during the NCAA tournament. 13 home runs, 57 RBIs. But you think about, she missed 13 games this year. She didn't start the season with the team. She came in a little bit later, but she was fantastic just all the way around. Had a great NCAA tournament, hit 409 for the season, and this is a player that is crucial to developing pitchers, and with the idea that Alex Tarocco is gone next year, having Kinsey Hansen back to kind of help bridge that gap a little bit and bring up Kirsten Deal and continue to work with her and some of your other, young pitchers that you've got that you're going to be bringing into the mix as well. It matters having a veteran, behind the plate. And then it also helps, kind of get Sophia Nugent ready to be kind of that next, player behind the plate for the Sooners that takes over after Kinsey Hansen as the starting catcher. So it's good because it gives you just another year to kind of get ready for life after Kinsey Hansen at catcher. Because one of the big questions going into next season is going to be, okay, who plays shortstop for Oklahoma now that Grace Lyons is gone? Well, you don't have to answer that question at catcher because Kinsey Hansen is back. And, when everything kind of looked dire against Clemson, she came through clutch. When you needed runs, in the Women's College World Series, she just came through. She just did. She helped be a part of those rallies, and she's a huge part of the top of the lineup, and someone that, when we talked about the game winner or the clinching game, and we talked about Patty Gasso, pinch hitting for her with, 2 runners on, you're like, that's an odd choice. But again, Kinsey Hansen doesn't complain about it. She doesn't, pout. She just goes and gets ready to do her job and go back into the field. But that's just how good she was during the NCAA tournament and all year long, and getting her back is absolutely huge. So there's a big reason why there's going to be a lot of confidence going into 2024. And the fact that you have Hansen back, you have your top 3 hitters back, Jada Coleman, T.R.A. Jennings, and Kinsey Hansen all coming back. Alyssa Brito, so your top 4 hitters all coming back. That's incredibly insane. Not to mention the pitching that's coming back as well for the Sooners with Jordy Ball and with Nicole May and Kirsten Deal. And it's just going to be another really, really great team next year.
And who knows, maybe there will be a transfer portal edition for Oklahoma. You just never know what's going to be on campus. But, I will say this about Kinsey. First off, you're right. And that was one of the takeaways. The first thing I shared the other night, or one of them, was what a cool moment it was from Kinsey Hansen to be that great of a teammate and that good of a cheerleader when getting pinch hit for in a massive moment with a national championship on the line. I think that speaks to me volumes about the character of Kinsey Hansen and the type of teammate that she is and how much she loves everybody else in the Crimson and Cream. And then secondly, John, just in closing here on this subject, honestly, there's a part of me too that, like, you see this news and Dean Blevins tweets, "Hey, guess who stopped by the News 9 studios to announce I'm coming back for a 5th year?" And it's Kinsey Hansen with her head coach, Patty Gasso. And, initially it kind of, well, of course she's coming back. But, really it's not guaranteed that Kinsey Hansen would make the choice to come back and be a part of this thing. It seems like a no-brainer, right? Because here you've done all these amazing things and you got one more year that you could take advantage if you want it. But we just never know what's in the headspace for somebody like a Kinsey Hansen who's battled some injuries and, oh, by the way, has won 3 consecutive national championships. So yeah, okay, it's great. Let's go for history and go win a 4th. But hey, I've got my degree. I mean, maybe I'm ready for the next stage in my life. So probably, I guess, just wanted to put out there that, maybe we should be a little bit more excited about somebody making the decision to come back and not so matter of fact that, hey, Kinsey Hansen's going to be back.
Absolutely. Because you think like she'd have options, like you could go to the WPF. She's going to be a coach someday. I'd imagine like somebody will hire her to be on their staff just because of her ability to work with pitchers, her ability to hit. Like she's got a future in the game if she wants it. She could have other avenues that she wants to explore with her life. But you're right. Having played 4 years, accomplished so much, there's never a guarantee. And it's like we talked about last week, like not taking for granted any of this, because you never know when a dynasty is going to end, right? It always comes to an end, but enjoying the ride while you're in the middle of it so that you don't get to the end of it and you're like, man, what just happened? And I say that not wishing a dynasty is going to end. And I have no idea when this thing's going to, not necessarily end, but have a down year. So I just say all that to say, like, be appreciative. Like Kinsey Hansen's back. We get to enjoy her one more time. We get to watch her work behind the plate. We get to watch her, at bat and see the incredible power that she hits with. I'm always still blown away by, the home run. I think it was in the Stanford game, maybe, or it might've been I can't remember what game it was. Maybe it was the Stanford or the Tennessee game where she hit it just like 15 feet off the ground and just cruised over the left center field wall. It was just absolutely amazing. But anyway, all that to say, welcome back, Kinsey. We're glad you're back. Excited you're going to have one more ride around the sun with the Oklahoma Sooners softball team. Look forward to watching you in 2024. That's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in and being a part of the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all platforms and on YouTube. Also, go hit that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. Follow Josh on Twitter at JoshOnRef. Follow me on Twitter at John9Williams. Follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Sooners, and be around for the live show Monday night, 9 p.m. Central Time, where I'm sure we'll have more recruiting nuggets to talk about. Who knows what the transfer portal holds in softball? We'll discuss all of that on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Sooners. But until next time, he's Josh. I'm John. Boomer Sooner.